everybody, this is the AllyCat. Welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited to have you here. I was finally able to put some of my Halloween decorations out, which makes me very happy considering the topic we're going to discuss today. This has been weighing heavily on my mind, and I want to, before we get started, talk about a warning, I guess you can kind of say. If you find sexual violence, rape, torture, homicide, if any of those things are not something that you enjoy hearing about, I would warn you against actually watching this video, because we are going to dive into a case that could quite possibly be, I can't really say that it's the worst case I've ever done, because unfortunately evil comes in all types and forms, but this is definitely on the high up list of just pure evil. Just pure evil. So if this is not something that you're interested in, I would be fine with you to tap out. I will have plenty of other lighthearted videos coming up your way, coming soon. So without further ado, you've been warned. And I'd like to say let's get spooky, but today I'm going to say let's get gross. So here we are on my channel, and before we jump into the case, I'd like to talk about something other than this man that has been nothing but my life for the last year. I'd like to talk about our sponsor. We are sponsored by Crow Leatherworks. It is a small business in Ohio. He has been a faithful sponsor of mine for a very long time. We do have a code. It's Blue Crow, 10% off. Everything he makes is 100% handmade, and he makes all types of things that you can wear for the spooky season. So I decided to show you guys this because, let me untie it. It's really cool, and you know, for some of you that want to go to adult Halloween parties, these are perfect. So, and this is actually like really, like, I don't know, it just feels very pagan to me. So he sent me this to show you guys, and I'm not going to wear it the entire time, but I wanted to show you it. It's really cool. This is leather, and these are actually real horns. Everything is humanely sourced, so I'm very 100% behind it. It also specializes in these roses, which he can scent to, with whatever scent that you decide to go ahead and use. I cannot believe that my kids can pick any time of the day to figure out when I'm doing a video. I, of course, am going to be editing this all out, but I would hope my son could hear me and would understand how much work it takes to edit all of this out. Thank you. So these roses are really great because you can give them to someone you care about. If you're on a spooky Halloween date, they are a lot of fun. I will include the link to his page where you can purchase his stuff. His name is actually Crow. That's what I call him. So he also does special personalized orders. I hope you have fun checking it out, and we would just like to say thank you for sponsoring this channel, because, you know, I have 10 subscribers and I need all the help I can get. Okay, so we're gonna jump into the case. So this case is like, I don't even know how I'm gonna go ahead and get started into it, but I am. So typically when there is a case where an extremely violent crime occurs, there's a reason for it. Like there's a past. So when I looked into this case, I wanted to make sure that I actually got all of the facts and evidence in place. So before we actually talk about what happened to make this a brutal, awful, horrible, disgusting case, we're going to go back. We're going to go back into this man's life. David Parker Ray was born November 6, 1939. David Parker Ray did not have a very good life. It was very hard. Apparently, his parents, they had quite a few fallouts and they were constantly arguing. It's been said that his father was quite cruel and was very abusive, so eventually the mother left and the father took the children and dropped them off at his parents' house. So it was also said that when he was raised by his grandparents, his paternal grandparents, that they were very strict. Now, when I say strict, I don't mean like brush your teeth, go to bed at 9 o'clock. It's been said that they were abusively strict. Like, if you didn't have your room clean or something wasn't right, you would get beat. And at that time in the 1950s, you know, spanking a kid or taking your belt off and beating them, that wasn't considered abuse. That was considered putting your child in their place. I have a lot of very deep-seated emotional issues with this type of behavior because I feel that nothing good can come of raising your hand to a child. And with that in mind, nothing good did come of what happened to David Ray Parker. His father would occasionally go back to visit him once in a while, and I say visit because he didn't stay there for very long. And when he did visit his child, and there was two of them, David Ray Parker had a sister, her name was Peggy. There wasn't very much about Peggy to read, but there was a lot about David Ray Parker. It was said that David Ray Parker was given pornography by his father at the age of like 10 or 12. So you've got to imagine this is like in the 1950s. And he's giving his 10 or 12-year-old boy pornography. So like right there, that's just very weird because, you know, America 1950s, kind of wholesome, at least on the outside looking in. And it wasn't just regular pornography, it was bondage pornography, which, you know, I don't know what that would look like in the 1950s. I'm envisioning like Betty Page and like easy stuff, but like they specifically stated pornography, and in some of the research that I did, there were snuff films mentioned. I don't even know how you would be able to get a hold of snuff films in the 1950s, but apparently they were gotten a hold of and they were given to David Ray Parker. So that makes a lot of sense. There were stories about how David Ray Parker was bullied in school and pushed around, and he was very isolated from all the other people, which also makes a lot of sense. And eventually, when he was about 15 years old, he would talk about how he would want to rape and kill somebody. Everybody thought he was joking. Somebody tells you that they want to rape and kill someone, listen. Listen to them, because it's important that you recognize the fact that you could be talking to someone very dangerous. But no one listened. David Ray Parker's first experience with bondage was at 15 when he took a girl out to the woods. He was very familiar with the area that he lived in, and he tied her up between two trees, and then he began to play with her. It sounds like it was very consensual, according to him, which he lied a lot, so you really do not know what is the truth and what's not, but there hasn't been anybody who came back from when he was 15 and said, oh my gosh, he did this to me. He said that she enjoyed it and it was a very pleasant and positive experience. Which, I mean, something like that could be for two teenagers. It could be very natural. But the things that, like, happened afterwards were not very natural. He had a multitude of wives. I think he was married, like, 4 times. There's very conflicting evidence of this. Like, a couple times it said that I read that he was married twice, and then he was married 4 times. Like, he did a lot of, like, he kind of was like a player. He liked to experience all women, which is very concerning because of how he viewed women and how he viewed that they could be used. So one of the stories that really interested me the most was that he, on his second marriage, he had actually ended up having kids, 2 kids. And he decided that he needed to go be a hippie and experience, like, you know, what we consider right now festival life and travel the world and do all these things. So he left his wife with these 2 kids and he decided to just travel. He ended up meeting this girl, and this girl I was said to be very, very pretty, and they met a couple and they ended up staying with the couple, and they like kind of like traveled around, pitched tents, and did what hippies do, because now we're talking around the 1960s, 1970s. And then one day this girl ended up telling David that she was pregnant, and the couple knew that she was pregnant because she told them that she was pregnant. And the next day, the girl was gone. And the couple asked David, like, hey, where did she go? And he was like, oh, you know, she's a very free spirit. She just took off. And the couple said they didn't know what they thought about that because it just didn't seem like something that she would do. But she was gone. Why would she take off while she's pregnant? So there's no proof of the fact that she was murdered or something happened to her. It just seems very odd that one day she would tell him that she was pregnant and then the next day she would be gone. And what's even more odd is that he decided that he was going to go back to his family and try to repair the situation that had happened and become a family guy again. So not only did this woman say she was pregnant, but she disappeared, and then David disappeared and took off back home. And nothing was really looked into because, you know, a lot of these people at this time, it was like the summer of love and everyone's running around and doing drugs, and, you know, a lot of things happen to people when they live those types of festival lives. And I hate to stereotype that, but we here at Michigan have some very big festivals when there's not a plague going on. And it's said that every time these festivals end, there's at least 2 or 3 bodies that are found. And this isn't just like trying to warn you against going to festivals. I'm all for it. And I know I'm going in another direction, and that's probably because I enjoy taking a break from the information that I'm going to give to you. But, you know, when you go to these festivals, you have to realize that you have to be careful because there's drugs, there's hundreds and millions of people that you don't know there, and there's not a lot of authorities there. And I know right now a lot of people are like not into authorities, but if something happens to you and you don't have a good group of friends watching you and keeping account of you, there's nothing that can stop you from something bad happening. And I'm just going to put that out there because if there's been any reason that I have decided to like do this case, it's because I need a lot of you guys to listen to me. You guys think that like the world is a wonderful place, and it is. It really is. It's just that there are some very, very bad people out there, and if they can get away with hurting you, they will. They will, and they don't care about you. You think, you think karma, and you think this will happen, and people and forces and stuff will protect you. And I had someone say that to me, like, you can't treat people bad. Bad things will happen to you. And my response was, how often do you hear about Stalin? You don't. You really don't. You hear about Hitler. But, like, Hitler was not... Stalin was, like, worse than Hitler. And he wasn't just, like, in rule for, like, a couple years. Like, he ruled for, like, 20 years. Don't quote me. I'm not an expert on Stalin. But the point that I'm trying to prove to you is that, people say that bad people can't do bad things or bad things will happen to them. That sounds great in theory. That really does. But bad people do bad things, and the smarter that they are, the more they get away with. So you have to be just as smart as them, and you always have to be looking behind your back. We're going to go back into the case that I love so very, very much, and we're going to talk about David Ray Parker, because as soon as I'm done with this video, I am not going to think about this man for the rest of my life. And I say that, and I will carry David Ray Parker probably for the rest of my life. I will focus on not thinking about him for the rest of my life, because he doesn't deserve not a second more on my brain. So David Ray Parker went back to his wife after his free-loving, hippie, pregnant love mate disappeared, and he decided he was going to be a family man. And he had a daughter, and his daughter was kind of like one of his favorites. Her name was Glenda Jean Ray. And the reason that I keep looking back and forth is because she didn't really go by Glenda Jean Ray. She went by Jessie. Now, here's the thing you gotta know, is Jessie was kind of rough and tough. And if you look at her, she looks rough and tough. And it said that, like, she was like a little bit of a bad, you can't say swear words on here. I already probably sweared. But bad. And, like, she was known for getting into bar fights, hanging out with Quakers, and all these things. And Jessie's going to be an important character in this story, which I think we should make note of. So just remember Jessie, okay? We're going to go back to David. So David didn't work it out with his wife. They ended up getting a divorce, but he kept his kids still, like, around him. And he had his special daughter, Jessie. There were lots of rumors about him and Jessie, just so you know, like, that they had a very special relationship. And when I mean special, I mean special. And so she never said anything about it, but there were rumors, incest going on, but it never came out, so I can't prove anything. So allegedly, that is what was said. So David ended up, after he graduated from high school, he went into the army and he became a mechanic. Obviously, this is before the marriages, I'm pretty sure, or maybe during, I'm not sure. It doesn't really matter. What does matter is that he was a mechanic in the army. And can I point out how many serial killers have gone into the army? Like, really? One day I'm gonna do a whole episode of how many serial killers have been in the army, because there are a lot. Like, a lot. Like Jeffrey Dahmer, like, just some of the biggest serial killers that ever were, and police officers too, and also security people. They're serial killers with them. I mean, just interesting fun fact, right? So David Ray Parker knew how to work on cars, mechanic-y stuff, and as weird as it is, he actually was known as a very nice man in the community that he lived in, which was called Elephant Butte. Elephant Butte was kind of interesting to me because it looks like elephant butt, but with an E on the end. Some people are like, was that necessary? Yes, it was necessary because I need to laugh a little bit through all this crazy mess, because you're going to find out that it's just can mess with you a little bit, and if it doesn't, we need to do some self-reflection. So he lived in Elephant Butte, and the other interesting thing is that he was known for finding animals that had been hurt, starved, not doing well, and nursing them back to health and releasing them. Isn't that interesting? I think that's interesting. Normally, serial killers hurt animals, but not David Ray Parker. He helped animals, and to be honest, that is one of the only redeeming qualities I've found out about him. He also ended up working in this area. It was like an algae filled lake or pond, or I don't even know. It's really pretty though. It's just absolutely beautiful. And it's in this area which is ironically called Truth or Consequence. That's the name of like the city, Truth or Consequence. And he was actually known to be like a guide or some kind of like ranger. You know how they have these like traveling people in these areas? This is what he did. Now, here's what's interesting. He was actually talking to somebody. He had a boat, I think. And he told them, if you ever want to dispose of a body, what you would do is you would cut the body open and you would pull out the entrails and you would put a bunch of rocks in it and you would throw it down in the lake. Because in the bottom of this lake that he was very familiar with were these like massive catfish, like mammoth catfish, like they're huge. And apparently if you threw those bodies down there, those catfish would eat everything. And whatever was left would just be at the bottom of the lake with those rocks. So there is suspected to be like 60 victims in this case. Dead victims, and they can't find the bodies. And he even said, like, you're never going to find the bodies. But it's just kind of wild that he said that he knew how to dispose of bodies. All right, let's get to the good stuff. Once again, using words that are not really meant to be good. Okay. So we're about to get into like the meat of the case. I am going to explain exactly the home of David Ray Parker. So David Ray Parker lived in this double wide, and it was in the middle of nowhere in this area. And it's said that a lot of people who are running from law enforcement or a criminal past, they will go to areas like this because it's easy to be forgotten and not found in areas. They don't have a lot of law enforcement there. It's really kind of an area where law enforcement, there's just not a lot of need for them. And it's usually typically 90% of the people that hang out in these areas are elderly and retirement people and people just trying to chill for the next 20 or maybe 30 years until the moment that they figure out what happens on the ever after. So, you know, that kind of says a little bit of something, that he moved to an area that was very secluded. Elephant Butte is actually in New Mexico, and it said that David actually traveled allegedly to Arizona as well, but the area that he was, like I said, was very secluded. So he had a double wide, and like he didn't really have a lot of neighbors near him, like not very close at all. Like I'm talking like 2 or 3 blocks down. We have blocks where we're like 1 person, 2 person, 3 person, 4 person. So this is very rural. So I would have to say like 50 feet to the right of David's home is this trailer. And the trailer is kind of interesting looking because it's got like some steps in it, and it said that he invested $100,000 into this trailer. Like you would have thought that he would have like got some like awesome like souped up RV. But no, this was a straight up trailer. And when you go inside the trailer, it's soundproofed, and here we go. You ready? Let's do this. In the middle of the trailer is this gigantic gynecological table, and you have like, it's been modified to basically hold a woman open and have her spread. And then there's like bondage equipment all over the place. Like we're talking like every single piece of bondage equipment that you could think of. Like he was really into electrocution type bondage equipment, like electric. I don't want to even say electric stimulation because you're not stimulating the person when you're shocking them. Like if this stuff is being used consensually, it can be used for pleasure. There's nothing wrong with that. But this stuff was not used for pleasure. There are hundreds and hundreds of dildos all over the place. There's like this gigantic sign that says the devil's den. And then there's like, I don't know why they took pictures of it, but there's like this candelabra with this cheesy like butt rock skull. Like, come on, guy, if you're gonna be pure evil, like have a little like pure evil taste. Don't be going to Spirit Halloween getting like the 1960s special. Anyway, back to the focus. So some of the things that he made, he specifically made by himself, and I said that there were dildos. Let's talk about one of the dildos that I saw. He had like this PVC piping that, you know, he got at Home Depot, and it's got like this big hole in it, you know, because that's what you want inside of you. Maybe some people do, but it's big. And then on the bottom, it's got another ring, you know, where the stuff is supposed to be. And then to top it off, he put nails coming out of the bottom. So that way when you get it jammed into you, it can be like a Hellraiser movie, and like, and he used this stuff. And there's like nails coming all over it, like I don't even know. Like how do you, so you find this beautiful woman and you strap her into this thing, and the first thing you think about is shoving some PVC piping up her nana and like having like nails go into her and just like jamming it. Like, wouldn't you want to like keep that part of her body intact? Because obviously you must want to do stuff to it. I mean, as sick it is as it is that I'm thinking that way, I don't know if that was like the happy ending to what he did, but that was in there. And so he just had some like the weirdest stuff. But what was very interesting is in the corner he had a video camera. And when the police finally did go into this trailer, they saw the video camera. So they're like, oh, they definitely have to have like videos of this. And they open up this cabinet, and there's like hundreds and hundreds of videos of him torturing, raping, sodomizing, like doing some of the sickest stuff that you could possibly ever do. Like, sex is supposed to be like a pleasurable, beautiful thing. What was in this video cabinet was not a pleasurable, beautiful thing. It was a twisted nightmare of things that just throw in a lot of my opinions in there and I will stop. Let's keep going. So let's talk about some of his victims. So David Parker Ray was very smart. When he videotaped these women, he never videotaped their faces. Like, you know how they're in the gynecological table? So he always had them like this. So you could see their body, but you could not see their face. And he tried to keep distinguishable marks out of the videotape. So when the cops finally did get to the Devil's Den, they had to figure out, like, how can we try to identify them. And I haven't mentioned what David Ray Parker called this. So he called this trailer the Toy Box, and this is how he earned the name the Toy Box Killer. Which, the Toy Box Killer, like, you think of something cute or something with the Toy Box Killer. So let's talk about some of the victims. All right, so let's talk about Kelly Garrett. Kelly Garrett lived in Elephant Butte around 1996, and she was married to a man, and they had gotten to a pretty big fight, and she was very upset with him. She was a young, pretty woman, and she stormed out of their dwellings and was like, I'm going drinking. You know, pretty typical stuff that you do when you get into a fight. You want to cool off, you want to go play pool, do whatever you want. She goes to the bar and she has one beer, and she ends up meeting up with her friend Jessie. Sound familiar? And so, like, she said that she felt really weird. Like, all of her friends ended up leaving and she was at the bar really late, but she felt like really knocked out from this one beer. And Jessie's like, you know what? I can take you to my dad's place and you can just sleep there. Well, it's Jessie, David Ray Parker's daughter, and Jessie had drugged her. And so once Jessie takes Kelly to David Ray Parker, she immediately has a dog collar put on her neck, and then she's like strapped into the gynecological table. And, you know, David Ray Parker makes, do I keep saying that? I'm just gonna call him David. David makes this videotape, and I thought about playing the videotape for you. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I think I'm not going to. You can find it on YouTube. It's really gross because he liked to say these things. It was like a 45-minute, like, introduction to what's going to happen to you in the next couple weeks. And he's basically like, the first thing he says is like, hey, he's like, are you comfortable? I really doubt it because you're all tied up. So you're going to be raped inside and out, and you're going to be used as a sex slave. And if you do what I tell you, you're going to live, which was a lie. And I'm going to take, like, dog pheromones, and I'm going to have dogs have sex with you, and I'm going to watch because I think that's awesome. And then me and my lady friend, we're going to do all these horrible things to you, and it's going to be awesome. And he didn't say awesome. And he just keeps going on and on. Like, you could tell he's, like, really getting off on what he's doing. And he plays this videotape for all of these girls. And he also even talks about, like, if you have to pee, you can go into the bathroom, and, or no, if you have to go, you know, number 2, you can go into the bathroom, but if you have to pee, there's a bucket on the floor, you need to tell us so you can pee, and then you have to clean it up, and you're gonna have to do housework, and then when you're done being used, we're gonna give you phenobarbital, and you're not gonna remember anything. And that's true. Some of his victims that actually did get away were given very, like, strong drugs that made them forget everything. And in a way, I kind of feel like this is, like, a good thing because who wants to remember all of that? But so Kelly basically is there for 3 days having all of these horrible things happen to her, and she ends up getting, like, dumped somewhere in a lake, and David actually, like, slits her throat. So I feel like he left her there for dead, which was kind of sloppy on his part because he knew about this catfish situation, which he didn't do that. And she goes back to her husband and her mother-in-law are like, you hooker, you should have been here, and where have you been? And like, just like totally don't believe her. So she ends up moving to another state. She has a whole new life. And when they actually busted this case open and they tried to figure out like how and who was involved, because they needed as many witnesses as possible so they could get David and put him in prison. The thing about Kelly is she had this like very unique tattoo on her leg, and it was like this weird twisty thing, and she saw a picture of her leg and her tattoo, and she was like, that's me. And they started talking to her and she started remembering all these things. She ended up being a star witness. That was one of the reasons that she actually got, David in trouble. Also, I just want to mention, I forgot to say this, but there was a time when Jesse was very against what was happening at the toy box. Apparently, David had had a victim and Jesse had watched him do some really horrible things. And so Jesse like went to the police and was like, look, this is what my dad did and it's wrong. And like, the cops went and talked to David and like they were all like buddy like, let's go get some pizza or something. I don't know if that's what they really did, but they did not believe Jesse. And like afterwards, like David was basically like, I told you, Jesse, they don't care. I can do whatever I want. And she was only 18 when they happened. So from that day, Jesse, like, she just thought like, this is how it is. Like, nobody cares, but like I can do whatever I want. And it's also very like it's also said that they were very into like Satanism and occultism, and a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions about Satanism. They're like, oh, it's the worship of Satan. Like, Satanism is not the worship of Satan. I mean, maybe there are some people that do that, but for the most part, Satanism is like, do whatever you want, take pleasure any way you want, just do it up because nothing exists. Not a lot of people know that, like, not real Satanists. But that's what they were into, and that makes a lot of sense because that's what they were doing. So let's talk about some of these two very important victims that helped actually put David away. So Jesse had a boyfriend, not a boyfriend, like a friend. His name was Dennis Yancey. And like him and Dennis Yancey were like super tight. They wherever they went, they were together. And it's kind of sad because they said that like Dennis went into the military and he kind of like turned his life around. But as soon as he came back to Elephant Butte, he like hooked up with Jesse and like, bad influence or whatever. And so they're running around, hanging out at the only bar, and they see like Dennis Yancey's ex-girlfriend, and then they come up with this plan to take Dennis Yancey's ex-girlfriend to David, and of course they do. And as soon as David gets her, he like does his thing to her for like a couple days and like does awful things. And they said that actually like Dennis Yancey felt really bad about it, but like he went into the toy box and both Jesse and David were like, well, now you know what you have to do. You have to finish her up. And they gave Dennis like this rope and he choked her to death. And so they videotaped it, and now they're like, now you belong to us, Dennis. You are part of our weird, we just do awful things to women crew. And yeah, so they had him. And like, there was nothing he could do, and he couldn't testify against them, and he basically, like, he was part of their crew. So here's the most important part of our fabulous story. David actually ended up meeting this girl named Cynthia. Cynthia, as weird as it is, was having a relationship with Jesse. And it was said that at one time, David, Cynthia, and Jesse were in this weird menage a trois. Weird, right? There's also like a rumor that like, Jesse ended up having a kid and it was David's. I don't know if this is true. She's never come out and said this. I'm sure she's hiding from the world. But anyway, Cynthia was like, she had like problems with the law. She was trying to run away from things that she had done. And so she hooked up with Dennis. And Dennis, of course, being like, you know, the hunter of women that he is, he has like these big parties, like these huge parties, lots of drugs and all this stuff. And like, you know, Cynthia announces one day, like, hey, everybody, this is my man. Like, okay, it's your man. Great catch. And so, you know, she has to go home to her family for some kind of reason. And, you know, David's like, I need to have a woman to satisfy my needs while you're gone. And she's like, yeah, let's go get one. So they go drive and they go find this woman. And her name was Cynthia Vigil. And they ended up taking Cynthia Vigil back and they kept her for a while. And I think that like David actually posed as like an undercover cop to get her there, and like they had her. She was like a prostitute, so she probably got in the car and she was like, what you want? And then he was like, you're under arrest. And they put her head in one of those boxes like that you see in these scary true crime fake fictionist shows like Criminal Minds, but it's real. And she had her head in this thing, and so like she basically was their sex slave. And so David had to go to work one day after Cynthia came home. Cynthia came home and she had to watch the sex slave who was tied to the bed. And so the phone rings and Cynthia's like, okay, I'm gonna go get it. And she goes in the other room and this girl is laying in the bed and she looks over and she sees the keys to her locks and like she starts like doing whatever she can to go get these keys because she's like, this is my moment to like get out of here. And so she starts getting them, and then Cynthia sees that she's trying to get them, and they're like, she tells whoever's on the phone like, hey, I gotta go. And they go in the room and they have like this big like bam, big fight and quarrel, and Cindy, the chained up sex slave, wins the fight and somehow gets untied, and she's got nothing but a dog collar on and gets out of the house and runs down the street butt naked. Can you imagine? That takes a lot. And she runs as fast as she can to the neighbors, which is like 2 or 3 blocks away. She's like, help! And they let her in, and they actually get the recording of this woman. She's like, you need to hurry up and get here. There's this naked woman, and she's got a dog collar. And they find out, like, this is what happened. And actually, while she was trying to get the keys, she tried to call. There was a 911 call from the house. I don't know if, like, Cindy called while she was trying to get away. But the cops knew that David's house had something to do with it. So they sent like squad cars to the woman's house with the sex slave, and they sent squad cars to David's house. And what's funny is Cynthia, David's woman, like calls them and tells them, and they get in the car and they're like, okay, we're gonna go get her. Like, so they're driving around trying to find her so they can pick her up. And the cops ended up pulling them over, and they busted into the toy box. They took the woman, and just like all of this stuff comes out, and they have the recordings, the videos, everything is out in the open. And one of the saddest little side stories there is, I know I've gone through so much, and I hope you've like stayed with me to this point and that I've explained this without sounding sporadic, because there are so many side notes, is that there was a woman who was hired to draw pictures of everything that was in the toy box, and she did it for 5 days. 5 days. And then when she was done, she went back to like the detectives and she was like, I'm all done. And they're like, okay, well, you can go home. And she was so disturbed by everything that she saw in the toy box. She went home and she took a revolver and she shot herself dead. So like that was kind of another victim of David's. So they gather up Jesse, they get the Dennis Yancey and Cynthia, and they're like all trying to talk to him and figure it out. And you know, Dennis, he basically admits like this happened and they have it on video, so he gets sent away. And then, you know, Cynthia, she's an accomplice to all this stuff, so she gets sent away. And then David is basically like, here's the deal, I'm not gonna talk unless you let my daughter go. And so Jesse walks, like, never gets in trouble for drugging anybody, no kidnapping charges, no anything. Like, take care, Jessie. I'm sure she's changed her name and she's out there somewhere, but she does. She's gone. Now, here's where it's really interesting. So he does end up talking to the police and kind of cooperating and sort of tells them, and he gets convicted of 293 years, and I think he spends so he gets convicted of all these years, and he's in prison, and 1 year into his sentence, he has a heart attack and died. So all of these horrific crimes that he committed and everything he did, he died after 1 year. And they've never found any other bodies. They've never found anything else. They do have a whole bunch of jewelry and clothes that was collected from the house that's on the FBI, website. And I will actually put that on the video. But yeah, this is a crazy story and one that I feel is very unjust. And I'm really happy that I finally got to tell his story, because I've been dreading this for a really long time. So that is the end of the story. I actually found out Cindy Hendy, which is David's girlfriend, I believe she was just paroled recently, so she's also out there somewhere in the world of weirdness. Cindy Hendy was released July 15th, 2019. So Cindy's out there and Jesse's out there and David is dead. Hopefully, if there's a hell, burning in it. And Dennis Yancey, the one who I feel just got caught up in it, even though he did kill somebody, is still in prison. So there's a toy box killer. I hope you enjoyed my extremely long video that I'm going to have to cleanse my spirit of. And I hope you learn that do not go to a bar and let your friend get your drink and not watch it be poured. And don't go to someone's house if they have a trailer in the front of it, which sounds crazy, but don't. And if you're a sex worker, which I'm not against, be careful, because there are some crazy people out there, crazy. And I can't really say much other than that. If you enjoyed what we talked about today, please subscribe, give me a like, give me a comment. Please don't write negative things on my YouTube. Some of you guys do, and it's just kind of I don't know, weird. But if you have something that you want to add to it, I would love to hear it. I hope you're having an amazing October. I hope you have all the spooky fun. And I hope you enjoyed this story as much as you could. Okay, guys, remember, stay safe and stay spooky. Bye.